Hi.
Hello, Luisa. We've had some fascinating conversations today, and we're really looking forward to this one too. First of all, welcome to Peace One Day. Welcome to AI to Peace. We're delighted to have you here. Perhaps we can get into the
Thank
interview
you.
straight off the bat. You're a UN youth envoy. Can you tell us a little bit more about that role and how that contributes to the advancement of digital justice?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for receiving me. It's also a pleasure being here and having this space to share a bit of my message and I guess tell a bit more about my experience. About being a young leader for the SDGs by the UN, actually, I was chosen just a few months ago, and I was actually one of the 17 people officially chosen and recognized by the UN as a young leader that represents the sustainable development goals. And that was after a competitive process with more than 5,000 people from all over the world. So I guess I'm still a bit shocked. But it's really a great opportunity to just showcase a bit of my values and my activism. And each of us were selected, right, as a result of different kinds of work we've done to really advance a cause that's related to the SDGs. So in my case, it was because of my work advocating for digital rights and data justice for all. So if I can tell you a little bit more about my role and actually what I do as a young leader, I would say that I have shaped my activism through two main lenses, which are both high quality research and I guess what I would call knowledge mainstreaming. Some of my recent engagements include being a researcher at the youth-led NGO, but also working for the UN and the OECD, publishing a book chapter. But I really believe that good research is research that everyone can understand, right? So that's also why I've put significant effort into really mainstreaming my findings to empower the youth, but not only to empower the citizens in general. So I've been doing that through social media. I've touched more than 1 million people with my content, so that's also a bit crazy. But I mean, now if you ask, okay, beyond myself, then what does it mean to be a young leader? And I would say that what it means, it's basically that the 17 of us that I previously mentioned, we were validated by the UN as young experts in these fields, which is very innovative, I would say. And that whenever the UN is requested for young specialists in X or Y topics, they turn to us. So it's a huge responsibility because, yeah, there's a lot at stake. And since being appointed, I've spoken at, I don't know, 15 events and about digital government, digital governance, youth empowerment, gender. And next week we'll be in New York at the ECOSOC Youth Forum. So all of that, pretty exciting.
Well, that's incredible. I mean, before we get to the next question, I should firstly congratulate you for that role, but also thank you for the research that you're doing. Like the world needs young activists, so that's fantastic. So look, today is the 21st of April. It's World Creativity and Innovation Day. Why do you think this day is important, particularly as we think about technologies like artificial intelligence?
Thank you so much also for the congratulations. And if we talk about a day like today, I think that's really important it's an important opportunity to celebrate, I would say, the power of innovation in, for example, achieving the SDGs, but also to raise awareness and bring attention to some of the criticisms that can come with when innovation is just kind of in our heads and we don't think for what or for whom, right? Because innovation as a word doesn't have a single meaning. It can mean so many different things. So, for example, right now, not everyone has equal access to technology and the internet. And we all know that this can really further marginalize already vulnerable populations. So, we talk about the concerns around issues like data privacy, security, algorithmic bias, ethics, and really to ensure that technology and innovation are harnessed for positive change. I think that we really need to use a day like this to push for an agenda that really prioritizes responsible and ethical practices. And because I feel like this is becoming such a buzzword, because everyone is talking about, being ethical and employing technology, but no one really, I don't know, like explains what that means. I feel like some of the things that I would raise, some of the issues that I would raise everyone's attention to is, for example, the need to just involve diverse perspectives when developing and implementing technology, especially when it comes to young people or gender diverse people. And really, as a youth leader, I believe that young people have a unique perspective and can offer valuable insights on the potential impact of technology on their communities, but also to be part of decision-making processes and raise attention to some of these issues that have been overlooked. So it's really not about being tokens, as we usually say, but it's really about being, on the same level as any other civil servant or minister or and so on. So I would say a day like today is a day for co-creation processes, but every day should be a day for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a little bit like Mother's Day, right? You should be good to your mother every day, right?
Yeah.
Not just on that day. No, I completely agree. So as we think about digital rights and data justice and perhaps digital ethics, what do you think the most important considerations are as it relates to AI? I mean, what is your view on this as a researcher?
Mm, I think that the key here that we as a society are struggling to find a balance between is really to put as much effort in enablers as in safeguards. So what I mean is we can't talk about open data without talking about dismantling data monopolies, right? We can't talk about cross-border data flows without talking about data protection. And that goes on and on. And I think that today, unfortunately, not everyone is on the same level of knowledge on how artificial intelligence works, right? Especially when we're talking about high level politicians or even researchers, because even when we say AI is not a being. It's not this, monolithic entity. Actually, it's super diverse and is constantly evolving. So I think that we really tend to overlook, I think, sometimes the nuances that come with that. So I don't know. I think that sometimes we focus a lot, right, on the AI of the future, and that may sometimes overlook the ways in which AI is already impacting us today and how we need for a responsible and ethical practice around the deployment of it today, right? So if you ask me, okay, so how to approach AI development today, I would tell you the following. So first, I would say definitely to make sure that all kinds of demographics are developing AI-based systems and applications. Then I would say that second, for sure, never use tech for tech. So just don't employ AI as a solution in itself, right? It should always be a means toward an end. And I think that sometimes we tend to forget that. And I think that the third one would be really to reinforce and really protect our data and reinforce the laws that protect our data, right? Because we can't rely on individuals to make sure that our data is protected. And especially, for example, I come from a country in the global south. I'm from Brazil. And I think that in the global south, especially, but not only, often administrations, they really lack the resources or the incentives to dig deeper, for example, into who's pushing which agenda or what is the validity of a database on which a system was trained and so on. So really, I think that we need strong regulation co-created with a civil society and really preferably from a bottom-up approach.
Amazing. Look, I can already see why you were selected by the UN. This is fascinating stuff. Listen, I've known you so far for 10 minutes, and I can already tell that you are a complete optimist. So I'm going to ask you a tricky question now. What are the risks? How can AI be used for kind of irresponsible means, and what can we do about that?
Let's kind of play a little game, I guess, here with not just you, of course, but with the whole audience, kind of like of imagining, because I think that when we imagine AI, we really think it's something out of the blue, and something completely ridiculous almost. But imagine a software, for example, that predicted who, let's say, among thousands of young girls would go through teenage pregnancy. Now, imagine if it did so without asking for any consent, without informing who has access to this database, or even giving this girls the possibility to leave, and then use these results to engage them in a mandatory government program, anti-teenage pregnancy, led by a religious lobby group. This sounds crazy, right? But actually, this is a very, very famous initiative that has been implemented by governments in several countries around the world. And that's all calling for this data revolution, right? So this is, it's just insane if we think about how this revolution doesn't address everyone equally. So I would say that I'm kind of torn in thinking that minorities are usually on the edge of having, our personal data exploited on a very regular basis and potentially having this information used against us. But I don't know. I feel like the unmindful adoption of data-centric systems has really provoked the emergence of an algorithmic type of governance that doesn't fully assess the potential risks of such practices before implementing them, right? So we're talking today about like, yeah, regulatory sandboxes and everything, but do these actually account for some of the risks that could be endured by, really minority populations? And here we're talking about like the youth, women, the queer community, racialized communities, and really these are all the communities that should be at the forefront of internet governance, but really they're not. So yeah, I would say that even that's connected also to my mission, even in the UN, which is really to raise awareness among young people, but not only on datafication, data surveillance, algorithmic discrimination, and really, as I was saying before, the co-creation process, right? I think that's really important to make sure that, okay, that's gonna sound a bit cliche, like leave no one behind, but really the problem of leaving people behind is that actually the consequences are just extreme and we don't really know how to deal with them or who to punish if something goes wrong, right? These are some of the questions we still haven't found an answer to. So we have to be really careful there, I think.
Yeah, I've not heard that use case before, the example of the teenage pregnancy use case. And it's, I guess, perhaps a good example of an example where the intentions were reasonable, but the execution was appalling, right? And so in some ways it's not malicious, it's just, poorly executed. So with that as a backdrop and everything we've said in the conversation so far, I'm mindful we've got just over a minute left. I'm really keen to understand from you, what advice would you give to other people that are perhaps just starting out with AI? They want to learn more. Like where would they go? What guidance would you give them to become an activist in their own right?
Yeah, I think that when we talk about, for example, about technology, AI, and so on, a lot of people really go into the technical mindset, right? So, oh, if I want to get involved in AI, I should be a coder, right? Or a computer scientist, an engineer, and etc. And I think that really we should go much beyond that. We really need to bridge this gap between coders and social scientists, between regulators and the civil society. So, for example, I'm a social scientist, and I didn't think when I started this career that I would ever be into technology, but then just being so close to technology systems and seeing how it impacts people, that's what really touched me. So I would say that if someone wants to get into this world of tech, that really they shouldn't drown so much on the code that they forget the people, right? So you can't get so connected that you disconnect from reality. So that would be what I would say. Keep connected, not just to a computer, but also to society.
Music to my ears. I think that there's so much space for everybody: philosophers, data scientists, researchers, policymakers. The list is almost endless. Everyone can get involved here. So, Luisa, thank you so much for participating in this event. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I can't wait to catch up with you online and follow you moving forward.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. Thank you.